Okay, I've got a confession to make. Now, it's very often that I get a lot of comments daily on plastering questions, your biggest issues, and to be honest, I fail to answer a lot of them. And that's because there's just too many that are coming. I'm not being big-headed, but there's a hell of a lot. Now, I want to start doing something new. I want to start tackling your biggest questions. I'm going to start doing Q&A sessions. We're just going to work our way through the biggest questions that constantly come up and try and deliver some answers to you and just help you with your general day-to-day issues, basically, because I know it's like plastering. I know it's hard starting something new, so if I can just help answer the big problems, the bulk of your issues, then that would be great. What I'm going to do is just go through the comments, the best ones. I'm just going to go through randomly and just answer them, and the ones that I feel like there's a constant issue that's coming up, we'll just tackle. So let's crack on, let's see how it goes. And if you like this feature, please let me know in the comments, because basically I don't know what's good and what's not unless I hear from you. So the more I know from you, the better I can make this channel. So please leave your comments below if this is something that's working. If it's not, just tell me it's rubbish. Okay, let's have a little look here quickly. Okay, good question. Now, lovely plastering job, but I really don't understand why tape and joint is not used in the UK. I lived and worked in Australia as a carpenter for 18 years and did not see any problems. Okay, so I actually worked in Australia and worked in New Zealand as well. Now, one of the big reasons is it's just the age of the properties. When I worked in New Zealand, I was doing the heritage work for a rendering firm, and one of the oldest buildings I worked on was 100 years old. 100 years old was one of the oldest buildings for the New Zealand, Auckland area. So, I mean, that gives you a scope on the general idea of how these buildings are going to be made. So a lot of it is stud work, a lot of it is plasterboard, and you're not going to be working on a lot of older materials really. So most of the houses we lived and resided in was all stud work, all plasterboard. So the main reason is we've got a lot older properties in the UK. We've got a lot thicker walls, we've got solid plastering, solid brickwork. Tape and jointing are always available. But another thing I do want to mention is when I did live in New Zealand, they had this massive thing called leaky homes, and that's basically where a lot of the buildings were built from a Mediterranean standpoint. Now, New Zealand is generally quite wet, and they had this massive thing called leaky homes because all the water was cascading into the buildings. And the property we lived in Auckland, you could see when you walk in the kitchen, there was a massive bubble on the wall, and you'd press it and water would squirt out. And it's just basically where the water's seeping through into the walls and coming out of the walls themselves. So, one, it's not a very strong product, tape and joint. It's very soft. It's not that strong, and it does take a lot of damage. And two, generally, I like to think that we're keeping up with plaster traditions because it's just a better product all around. Yes, it is more expensive, and we are using a lot more tape and joint on the new builds, but we've got to ask ourselves, how long are these new builds actually going to last? And is it going to be worth, in the long run, to start doing that method? So we'll find that out, but my opinion, older buildings and traditional plastering methods are still working well. Okay, here's one. Question, what's your video on sponge float plastering? Did it myself, very good results. But I'm not sure when you spray most of the water on the wall to sponge. The water was flowing down the wall, but the float was still dragging. Is this normal? So basically, sponge float plastering is just another form of plastering. So basically, you spray your walls down once you've applied your 2 coats of plaster, but you spray it down, soft mist of water, and you use a sponge, and you basically sponge it back up. And what this does is it allows to get rid of any high spots, and it brings the plaster to a pace where it's almost completely flat, but it's got a lot of grainy marks in there. Now, I don't actually mind sponge float plastering. It gets a lot of criticism, but it's very messy. And what he's described there is where you've either done 2 things: sprayed too much water on the wall, or you've not floated it, you've not given it enough time for the water to saturate the plaster. So here's your tip: when you are spraying the wall ready to do the sponge floating, do a fine mist of water onto the plaster. You want the plaster to take up a little bit, and then from there you can flatten it. What he's basically said, he's sprayed the wall, he's sponged it too soon, and the water's just gone all over. It's basically just emulsified the plaster and brought it back to the original state. So you want to leave it a bit of time once you've sprayed the water before you do the sponge floating. That is my advice to you there. Now, this is an interesting one. Everyone is now saying Flexi trowels are no good. Looks good, but when painted, the finish is awful. Carbon steel is king. This is the way. This is very interesting because it seems like we've had this massive surge of Plexi trowels. Some people had 6 trowels in the bucket at one point. And I was one of them people, we were bought into this this idea that you need 6 trowels to become a plasterer, and you need all the Flexi trowels, all the gold trowels, all the nice looking trowels. But it's like we've come full circle, and what I've found is over the years I've used less and less trowels, and now I'm just kind of using the carbon trowel and finding the results are brilliant. You know, we're going back to the basics almost. So I don't know if it's not just me, but a lot of plasterers are starting to clock on the fact that we don't need these Flexi trowels. We don't need to be having 6 trowels at a time. And to me, the carbon trowel at the moment, the one I'm using, the Nella Premium, is just an amazing bit of kit, and it's doing a really good job at just working all the way through. And there's no fear of getting these ripples, because that's what a lot of plasterers are doing. They're using Flexis too early, and when the light does shine, when it's painted, you're getting these walls with huge indentations, ripples all over, and it's just not good. So I don't know if we're coming to this realization that maybe we've, 1, not using the trowels correctly, and 2, maybe we just don't need them. So this was regarding the plasterboard lifter. I did a video where I was showing it using a plasterboard lifter to board a ceiling out, because I often work alone, I struggle to get the boards up. And someone said, how simple is it to break down after a job and pack up in the van? It only comes in 3 parts. Once you've made it up, you've got 3 parts, and it disassembles in about 2 minutes. It's a great bit of kit. And I do recommend that these there was only like 170 quid, and the amount of money it saved in terms of labour, and I've got it for life now. It's just a real good bit of kit. So click the video here somewhere, I'll show you the plasterboard lifter. It's a good bit of kit, and it takes about 2 minutes to throw in the van, but it is quite bulky, so you've got to put it back in the garage. But yeah, it's a bit of a game changer. So I've got this one, beautiful plastering as always, but that cup of tea you made at the start of the video looked pretty grim. I've got a confession. I do like a Milky tea. Very sorry, please forgive me. I'm not a proper builder because I don't like a proper strong brew. So there you go, that's my apology. If you can look past that and keep watching the channel, then I much appreciate it. But yeah, I like a Milky tea. That's the way I am, sorry. That's the way it is. So this is a very interesting one. I get this quite a lot as well. Great video. I've always been interested in plastering. At 46 years old, maybe learning a new trade like this now would be too much on my body. Yeah, plastering is a tough game. It's not as easy as some people make out, and you know, unless you're doing good meterage and really pushing for meterage, you will get good money, but your body will take a hit. So I'm not saying don't start plastering, but if you are considering doing it as a trade, then just realise that it is very tough on the body. Like my joints, my elbows especially, my shoulders, you do feel it. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and just say it's the easiest job in the world, because it's not. Like, I'm 32 and I do feel it. You know, to think that I've got to do this for another 30 odd years, I do love plastering, but to think that, what state am I going to be in by the end of it, you know? Am I going to be battered, and by the time retirement age I'm limping around everywhere? It is a tough trade, and anything with that much repetition on one part of the body is going to take its hit. So yeah, it is something you have got to consider, and I'd love to be able to plaster and really toy with the idea of doing some skimming in my own house, as the walls are atrocious. The only thing is, everything is painted with silk. I tried scraping some off, but there's some stubborn areas. Would blue grit be the one? Now, you are right in saying any silk paint, you do want to be using a primer. So much better than PVA. Problem is PVA, one, it takes forever to dry, and you haven't really got much of a key. So when you do plaster onto it, you might find that you get a bit of sagging, and it just doesn't get a strong grip to the wall you're working on. So Plasterer's pre-grit is one that I highly recommend. Don't like blue grit. I think it's probably the worst pre-grit on the market. I know it's tough for some plasterers to hear that, but Bondit Plasterer's pre-grit is the one for me. Great bit of kit, and it really does the job. So you are right, any silky paints, definitely recommend putting a primer on like this rather than PVA. Just going to get a much better result. This one just made me laugh. Electricians don't make mistakes, we just create problem-solving opportunities. You're very true. Electricians do create a lot of problems. But that's okay, because you made a good comment, I'll let you off. But you are right, electricians can be a pain in the ass. So thanks for the comment. That's it, it's the end of the Q&A. Now I know this is totally different to anything we've done before, but I just thought I'd start connecting with you because I don't always get to read your comments. So I'd like to try and get through your problems, and if you're feeling some of these problems, then I'm sure everyone else might be feeling them as well. So if you like this, please leave a comment, because if I don't hear from you, I don't know if it's good or not. So please let me know how it is, and if you do like it, we'll keep doing it, we'll keep passing it on, and we'll maybe make it a feature that's included in the channel maybe once a month, we'll see. But yeah, let us know if this was helpful. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and leave any questions you might want answering below, and I might get to them in the next session if it goes well. Thanks so much for watching, I'll see you in the next one, cheers.